Right, good morning, everybody. Gemarah Sanhedrin, page Yud Zayin, 17a, making progress. Now,
page 90 in the...
Page 90, correct, in the Steinsaltz, 17a1 in the art scroll, Yud Zayin Aleph if you're in a big boys Gemara. Right, so what were we talking about last week? Well, you will remember we need to go up to the bottom of page 89 for this. Have I shared the screen? No, I haven't. Let's do that now. Okay, you should have it.
Yes.
Okay, so do you remember we were speaking about how did Moshe choose the 70 elders? And we spoke about the episode of the quail, where the people complained that they wanted meat. Give me a meat, I want a shtick flesh. And Moshe said, I can't do this. I can't handle these people anymore. I've had it with them. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, don't panic. I'm going to get you help. And I'll give you 70 elders to help you with. And Moshe says, that's all very well, but how am I going to choose 70 elders? If I choose 6 from each tribe, I've got 72. I'll have 2 over. If I only choose 5 from each tribe, I'll have 60. I'll be missing 10. And if I choose 5 from some and 6 from another, there'll be a broigus. The tribes that only get 5 will be unhappy. So what am I meant to do? So what he decided to do was to have a lottery. And he then put 72 pieces of whatever it was, papyrus or pottery or paper or whatever he had at that time. And on 70 of them, he wrote the word zaken, elder. And on 2 of them, he wrote nothing. And it was, remember that word, chalak, smooth. And do you remember last week we went through the whole business of glatt kosher, glatt being the Yiddish word for chalak, smooth. So he put these in a box, the idea being that 72, he chose 6 elders from each tribe, all 72 of them came to the box, put their hands in and took one of these thingamajigs, whatever they were, papers, and if they got one that said elder, then they were in. And if they got a blank, it's not like Scrabble. If you get a blank when you put in your hand in the Scrabble bag, you're very happy because you can use it for anything. But if you get a blank on this occasion, it's not so good. You have been, it has been shown, and Moshe says, I'm sorry, it seems that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you. I can't help you. And so that was how Moshe chose the 70 elders. Now, we then spoke briefly about 2 people.
Excuse me, Johnny, it just finished us off. That little paragraph says, what can I do for you? What does that mean?
It means, what can I do? I can't help you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has indicated that you are not one of the elders.
Just the way it said.
Yeah, basically, it's out of my hands. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is chosen. As Rav Steinsaltz says here, the omnipresent does not desire you. What can I do? You know. Was kann ich tun? Can't do anything for you. We're stuck. So then we spoke very briefly last week, and we're going to come back to it in a while. We spoke very briefly about the 2 gentlemen called Eldad and Medad, who were part of this story. And we're going to come back to them in a minute because they were part of these 72 people. And the Torah tells us, as we'll see in a minute, that they stayed in the camp. And the Gemara is going to discuss what it means when it says they stayed in the camp and they prophesied. And we'll come back to that in a minute. The reason we'll come back to in a minute is because the Gemara does what it does better than any other book you will ever read, and that is it digresses and goes off at a tangent, and that's where we're going to start now. So we have just described the method that Moshe used to choose 70 out of 72 elders. Okay? Or are you all with me so far? Yes, right. So now we're at this over here at the top of page 90, on the screen at the top here. Kayotze badavar ata omer. Kayotze badavar ata omer. You can say something similar in another matter. In other words, the Gemara is now going to go and tell us another time when Moshe used the same method of choosing people by this method of lottery. So here it says the Gemara, it quotes a pasuk, V'lakachta chameshet shkalim lagulgolet. You shall take 5 shkalim per head. Gulgolet means per head. Okay, you shall take 5 shkalim per head. Now, without looking at the Steinsaltz translation, have you any idea what this is talking about? And the answer is no, you have not any idea what this is talking about, because you would have to know exactly where that pasuk came from. And other than David Marks, who's not with us, and Ruby, who's not with us, us mere mortals would not know where this pasuk comes from unless we have Rav Steinsaltz to help us, to tell us that it comes from Numbers chapter 3. So let's not mess about and let's go straight to Numbers chapter 3 and see what this whole story is talking about. So we need to go
collecting gold for the Mishkan, is it?
Ah, now that's what I thought too when I first read it, Johnny, but it isn't.
Right.
Because we there you were talking, if you stop to think about it for a moment, you would know that you're not right. I thought the same thing at first, and then thought, no, it can't be. Why? How much did they give for the Mishkan?
Half a shekel.
Ah, and what did we just say?
5.
So it isn't that, is it?
Yeah.
So, and we also said in the half a shekel that the rich can't give more and the poor can't give less. Remember?
Yeah.
In Parashat Shkalim. So it isn't that.
Right.
So here we go. Now, what was the original plan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for service in the temple? Who was
firstborn?
Yes, thank you, Michael. The firstborns were meant to be the, I won't call them the Kohanim because it confused you, but they were meant to be the performers of the service in the temple. Only they lost the job. Why did they lose the job? Let's go back a step. Why were they meant to be the ones who were performing the service in the temple?
They were the ones who were saved in Egypt.
Correct, yeah. Johnny. They were the ones who were saved in Egypt because the last plague, as you know, was the plague of the firstborn. Every firstborn of the Egyptians was killed at the end of the 10 plagues before Yetziat Mitzrayim, and the firstborn of the Israelites did not suffer that fate. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu then says, of course, Kadesh li kol b'chor, sanctify to me, or they are sanctified to me. Who is sanctified to me? Kol b'chor, every firstborn. So from that moment on, the firstborns were sanctified to Hashem. They belonged to Hashem because Hashem saved them from the fate of the Makat Bechorot, from the plague of the firstborns. So they belong to Hashem. And what that means is that they would be in the service of Hashem, and they would do the service in the Mishkan and then in the temple. So that was the original plan, Kadesh li kol b'chor. Now, then what happened? Why did they lose the job?
Would have thought there must have been too many of them.
Golden calf.
There must have been hundreds of them.
Hold your thought, Johnny, about there being too many of them. Hold that. That's not the reason they lost the job, but it's an important thought.
Yeah.
Michael, what did you say?
Golden calf.
The golden calf. Tell me about it.
They lost it when Aaron built the golden calf on the behest of the people of Israel.
Okay, so they built the golden calf, and what's that got to do with the firstborns?
They didn't say anything, I presume.
Well, they served the golden calf. They were.
They served it. No, they served it. Yeah.
Who didn't serve the golden calf?
Aaron.
Aaron did not. Correct. And who
Levi,
else?
the tribe of Levi.
The tribe of Levi did not serve the golden calf. So God says, as it were, to himself, these performers of the service of mine, these firstborns who have been sanctified to me, have just desanctified themselves because they have worshipped another God. They have gone astray. They have served this golden calf. I no longer want them to be the people who are going to do my service in my temple. They have lost the privilege. And so he looked around and he said, right, well, who can I give it to instead? There's a tribe over there that did not get involved in this unpleasant business of the golden calf. And that was the tribe of Levi. So I will take the tribe of Levi to be my new performers of the service. And now we can call them priests. Part of the tribe of Levi will be the ones who actually do the service itself. And the rest of them will be accompanying them, their assistants, as it were, to provide the music, to provide the backup service. The tribe of Levi are, in modern parlance, the new firstborns. Okay? So Levi is the new firstborn. Now, the problem is that the firstborns were sanctified to God. And so we have to desanctify them. In the same way, if you have an animal, right, that you have said, I sanctify this animal to Hashem, I declare this animal to be a sacrifice, a korban. That animal has to be offered up. But you can redeem it by saying, okay, I'm going to desanctify or unsanctify the animal, and I'm going to put the sanctification, the holiness, onto this money. So let's say the animal's worth 100 shekel. I'm going to take 100 shekel and I'm going to say the animal is now released from its sanctification, but this 100 shekel now is holy. I can then go and use that 100 shekel to buy another animal in Jerusalem, because I don't want to schlep my animal all the way from the north to Jerusalem. So I've desanctified that one. I've got 100 shekels of sanctified money. I'll go to Jerusalem. I'll buy an animal with this 100 shekels, which is holy. And that animal then becomes holy. So you swap them over. Got it? So
he has to get another animal to see so. He can't give the 100 shekels to...
No, because you said I'm going to give an animal. If you said I'm going to give 100 shekels worth, depends exactly what you said. Because it's an oath. So here, it's the same sort of thing. The firstborns were sanctified. Kadesh li kol b'chor. We've read it in the Torah. Moshe said so. The firstborn are sanctified to me. So now we have to go through a process of desanctifying the firstborns and sanctifying the Leviim. In other words, we've got to swap them over. Okay? This in place of this. Now, with the animal, I did it through the money thing. But if there were two animals exactly the same, you could just redeem one onto the other. You can swap over the sanctification. Can't do that with an animal so easy, because no two animals are actually worth exactly the same. So but with the Leviim and the firstborns, you can do a direct swap. So for every firstborn, you have to find a Levi and swap over the sanctification. It's almost like an automatic process. God says, right, you, firstborn number 1, you are desanctified. Levi number 1, you are sanctified. And we'll go through firstborn number 2, Levi number 2, firstborn number 3, Levi number 3. And that works as long as you've got the same number of firstborns as you've got Leviim. You with me so far, everyone? Yeah. Now, the problem is that we didn't have exactly the same number of firstborns as Leviim, as the Torah tells us. And this is where our pasuk that the Gemara has quoted has come from. Now, did any of you even remember that there was a story where the Torah says that the firstborns and the Leviim have to swap over and have to pay for the privilege 5 shekels? The answer is no, because I didn't either. But here it is in chapter 3 of Bamidbar. It's here. Now, let's have a look. Jeffrey, are you with us?
Yeah.
Verse 39, please.
The sum of the male Levites, according to their families, from the age of 1 month and upward, counted by Moses and Aaron, according to the word of the Lord, was 22,000.
Okay, stop there. So we've got 22,000 Leviim. So we now need to see how many firstborns we've got. Carry on, verse 40.
The Lord said to Moses, count every firstborn male aged 1 month and upward of the children of Israel, and take the number of their names. And you shall take the Levites for me. I am the Lord, instead of all firstborns among the children of Israel, and take the Levites' animals instead of all firstborn animals of the children of Israel.
Stop there. So there it is. Hashem says very clearly, you have to swap the Levites instead of tachat kol bechor, instead of all the firstborns. Right. So what happened? Verse 42, Jeffrey.
So Moses counted every firstborn of Israel as the Lord had commanded him. The firstborn males aged 1 month and upward, according to the number of names, was 22,273. Stop
there. So we've got a bit of a problem now, haven't we? Because we've got 22,273 firstborns and only 22,000 Leviim. We've got 273 firstborns over. What are we going to do with that?
Problem. You've actually got a bigger problem there. What about all the Levites who are actually firstborn themselves? They would have been sanctified anyway.
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a good point.
That's a good question. So are we saying that the 22,270, are we saying that the 22,273 firstborns includes the firstborns of Levi? Don't know. If it is, then you may have to say the following. Let's assume you're right for the minute. All you then do is you say, okay, you, firstborn Levi, don't need to desanctify yourself, or you do need to desanctify yourself because I'm desanctifying your firstborn status, and now I'm re-sanctifying you as a Levi. So it doesn't matter either way. The figures still work, Michael, because the Leviim, all they do is a paper exercise. That firstborn, who's a Levi, is still there. Only he's now not counted as a firstborn, he's counted as a Levi. So the figures are the same. The figures are the same. It doesn't matter. So let's say you've got 1,000 Leviim who are firstborns, right? Let's say you've got, just for an argument's sake, you've got 1,000 Leviim who are firstborns. Normally, you would be saying, right, you firstborns, you're out of the picture. I need to find 1,000 Leviim to take over your job. But they're already Leviim, so I'll choose the same people. So it's just a paper exercise. So the figures still work. No? Why not?
Look, you're now all saying that the Levites can desanctify themselves, basically, aren't you?
No, it happens automatically. You'll see in a second how it works automatically.
Because if one follows the logic, if the Levites can desanctify themselves, whether automatically or not, then it means the firstborn of the other places, other people in Israel can desanctify themselves automatically.
They can. It's a bit like in Parliament in the UK, right? You don't have to go and vote as long as you pair yourself up with one of the opposition. That's how it works, right? It's called pairing, right? So basically, and you'll see why it's important, this. If you're a firstborn right? What you want to do is find a Levi and say, right, I'm swapping with you. In the same way as if you're a Labour voter and you're a Labour MP and you don't want to go in the lobby because you can't get there, you find a Conservative MP who also doesn't want to go to the House, and you'll say, can we pair up, right? And so you let the whips know that you've paired MP A with MP B, and they're done. So ideally, what the firstborn would do is to find himself a Levi to pair up with. That's if he did it all himself. It's not how it works, but that's the theory. So in our situation, the Levi who's a firstborn says, I need to find a Levi. I'll find myself. So it's automatically done. So the figures work. The figures work even if it's with the tribe of Levi. And I'm sure you're right. Those firstborns do include the tribe of Levi. Let's go on and you'll see a bit clearer. So you've got 273 firstborns more than you've got Levian. So what happens then? Verse 46, Jeffrey.
As for the 2,073 of the children of Israel,
273.
Sorry, as for the 273 of the children of Israel who required redemption, who are in excess of the Levites, you shall take 5 shekels per head, according to the holy shekel, by which the shekel is 20 gerahs.
Okay, stop there. So you've got 22,000 Levian. You've got 22,273 firstborns. 22,000 of the firstborns pair themselves off, as it were, with the Levian. But there are 273 schleppers who've got nobody to pair up with because they've run out of Levian. So what have they got to do? The Torah says they have to cough up 5 shekels each. 5 shekels is a lot of money. Not now, but it was then. Tells you what kind of shekel it is. Shekel HaKodesh. Esrim Geirah. 20 Geirah. It's quite a lot of money. 5 shekels. So there's 273 firstborns who are going to have to cough up a serious amount of money, whereas 22,000 of them don't have to cough up anything because they're paired off with a Levi. Are you with me?
Yeah.
So how are you going to do it? Well, you can say, sort yourself out, go and find yourself a Levi, and if you're one of the 273 last schleppers and you haven't bothered to find yourself a Levi, well, then you've got to cough up 5 shekels. And you can imagine what would happen then, can't you? There'd be fighting and squabbling and, no, he's my Levi. No, he's not. He's my Levi. Levi don't care less, right? He's going to be paired up with somebody, but there's going to be big fights there. Can't have that. So that wasn't the idea. So then what happened was, verse 48, Jeffrey.
You shall give the money to Aaron and his sons in redemption for the firstborns who are in excess of them. So Moses took the redemption money for those in excess of those redeemed by the Levites.
Stop there. So Moshe took the money from those 273 and he gave it to Aaron. But how did he choose the 273? Nobody's going to volunteer to give their 5 shekels and say, oh, well, I'll give the 5 shekels. I won't pair myself off with a Levi. So then we come to our Gemarah. And this is how he did it. Let's go back to the Gemarah. Okay, now you can see, that's our pasuk that we've just said. You shall take 5 shekels per head from the 273 excess firstborns. Now, none of us would have got that where that first came from because we don't even remember it when we're shown it, which just shows really how little we all know, except for David and Ruby who aren't even here. So, Amar Moshe, Moshe said, Ketzad e'eseh lahen liYisrael. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? He says, Im omer lo, if I say, ten li pidyoncha vatsei, give me your redemption, and then you can go. Yomar li, he's going to say to me, Kvar Pada'ani ben Levi. No. I'm not one of the 273. I'm one of the 22,000. I've got a Levi. I've already redeemed myself against the Levi. So that's no good. He's going to think nobody's going to put their hand up to do it. So Me'asa, what did he do? He used the same technique that we talked about last week. Hevi, this was a bit of a job. Last week he only had to find 72 pieces of paper. This is a bit of a job here now. Hevi esrim ushnaim alafim pitakin. He had to bring 22,000 little ballot votes. What do they call them? Ballot cards. Whatever they were. Ballot papers, yeah. And what did he write on them? V'katav aleihen ben Levi. He wrote on it, you have been redeemed by a Ben Levi, by one of the tribe of Levi. And then he brought v'al shlosha v'shivim u'matayim, and then he brought another 273 ballot papers, katav aleihem, and he wrote upon them, chamisha shkalim, 5 shekels. Bilalan, we had that word last week. Bilalan, a bilbul, right? Read me a bilbul. He mixed it all up. He mixed them all up, these 22,273. Unatanan bekalpi, and he put them in the ballot box. Remember, we used that word last week. I explained to you that's the ballot box that's used in elections. Kalpi, it's called. He put it in this box. Amar lahem, he said to all 22,273 firstborns, Telu pitakechem, come and pick your piece of paper out of the ballot box. Mi sha'ala biyado ben Levi, whoever got, when he put his hand in and pulled out the Scrabble thing, the one that got Ben Levi, off he goes, he doesn't have to pay anything. But Nebuch, so Amalo, he said, Kvar Peda'acha Ben Levi, you're okay, you've been redeemed. Mi sha'ala biyado chameshet shkalim, the one, the Nebuch that puts his hand in and gets the piece of paper, he opens it up and it says 5 shkalim, he's got to cough up. Amarlo, Moshe said to him, 10 pidyoncha vatzei, cough up your money, 5 shekels please, and you are free to go. So this was just the another example that the Gemarah digresses to tell us of the method of choosing a situation, choosing people where you have an excess of the number that you require.
Can I ask a question here, therefore? Can't I, therefore, avoid the Pidyon HaBen nowadays if I just find a Levi who hasn't redeemed somebody, and therefore not have to pay the 5 shekels over in the current situation? For example, my son is expecting he's expecting a son. It's going to be a firstborn, and I know plenty of Leviim who've never been paired off with anybody.
Okay, so the first thing is it's the Kohanim that we redeem our Pidyon HaBen to.
Yeah, but you said the pairing goes against the Leviim.
This was here in the original scenario where the firstborns were meant to have done the job. Right at the beginning, God said, I don't want the firstborns anymore. I want the Leviim, and we have to do this Pidyon. Okay, so what we are doing when we do a Pidyon HaBen is a reenactment of this scenario, which is why we use the 5 shkalim. Okay, so your question's a good question, Michael. I don't want to pay the 5 shkalim. I'm going to find a Kohen who has never, and I've got another question, by the way, in a minute.
Well, I was talking about, I was going to find a Levi, not a Kohen at this juncture.
But the halacha in Pidyon HaBen is that it's a Kohen, not a Levi, because it was the Kohen that actually did the service.
All right.
The Leviim with a backup team, if you like. So the Torah tells us, or the halacha tells us, that you redeem your firstborn son to a Kohen. Same idea, though. So you're saying, and I've got a corollary question. You're saying, I find a Kohen, nobody has redeemed their son against this Kohen before. Why do I need to give him 5 shkalim? I can just pair myself off. And I've got another question for you. A Kohen who has done a pidyon haben and who has received the 5 shekalim, how can he then go and do a second pidyon haben? Because he's already got a job, hasn't he? He's already had a firstborn redeemed against him. Why? How can he come? He can take another 5 shekalim from somebody else.
Because the 5 shekalim take over the holiness effectively, rather than the Kohen.
In effect, what you're doing is you are buying back your firstborn from the Kohen. So it's a similar process to this, but what you're actually doing in a pidyon haben is you are saying like this: really, this firstborn should be serving God in the Beit HaMikdash, but actually he's not able to do that because the Kohen is doing it for him. Right? Now, that Kohen, in effect, is doing the service in place of the firstborn. And I need to pay that Kohen because that firstborn should belong to the Kohen because he's doing his job. And because he's doing his job, he has lost his inheritance because the tribe of Levi didn't get an inheritance in the land. Right? They didn't get a portion in the land. They get all the matnat kahuna, but they didn't get a portion in the land. So, if you like, this 5 shekalim is that your son is going to give to the Kohen is compensation to the Kohen for having lost his inheritance in the land and for doing that firstborn's job. Okay? So it's not quite the same idea here, but it's a very similar idea. And I'm sure that that's why the 5 shekalim is used in the pidyon haben process, because it is reminiscent of this process that in order to redeem yourself, you had to give 5 shekalim, which went to the Kohen. And and as it were, it's compensation. So I'll tell you a nice story about this, by the way. This is a story, I'm told it's a true story. I didn't hear it firsthand. And it's a story about a time in Soviet Russia where a baby was born, needed a pidyon haben, and there was no Kohen. There was no Kohen that they could bring from anywhere. And so they didn't do a pidyon haben. Eventually, a Kohen came on a visit from out of the Soviet Union on a visit, and they realized that this was a Kohen, and this family said, we want to do a pidyon haben. We've never done this mitzvah of pidyon haben. This child, by the way, my son-in-law had his pidyon haben at aged 28 or 29 or something. He never had a pidyon haben when he was a child. His family were not religious. They didn't do it. When he came into our family, we realized that he hadn't had a pidyon haben, and we made a pidyon haben in our house for him. Jeffrey was there, and we didn't put him on a tray and bring him in on a silver tray because we'd have needed a rather big silver tray and a lot of people to carry him. He's a big lad. But we did a pidyon haben, and he had his pidyon haben at 29 years old or whatever he was. So you can do a pidyon haben whenever. You're meant to do it after a month, but if you haven't done it, you've got to do it at some point. So this baby in Russia, however old this child was, let's say he was 6 months old, the Kohen arrives into Russia on a visit, and they say, I want to do a pidyon haben. So they get together a pidyon haben, and the service of the pidyon haben, the Kohen says to the father, what do you want? Do you want to give me this child, or do you want to redeem this child with 5 silver shekalim? And the father is meant to say, I want to redeem my child, I want my child, and here's the 5 silver shekalim. This father said to the Kohen, wait a minute. If you're asking me, do I want to keep this child here with me in Soviet Russia, where I can't bring him up as a Jew, and he cannot fulfill all the mitzvahs of the Torah? Or do I want him to go with you to Chutz La'aretz, and you will keep him, and at some later date, if I'm able to get out of here, I will redeem him then? That's what I would prefer. I don't want to redeem him right now. I don't want to give you this far. I want you to take this baby. What an amazing madrega to be able to reach that you're prepared, as it were, to send your child away. This was the same happened in the Holocaust, of course, didn't it? That was a physical survival. This is spiritual survival. It's a very wonderful story. I don't know whether it's true. I don't know whether it really happened, but it's a great story. And I don't know the end of the story anyway, what happened, whether they did redeem him or not. So I don't really know the whole proper story, but the idea really touched me. I heard it many, many years ago, and it stayed with me. So the Pidyon Haben process that you're talking about is a compensation to the Kohen. It's related to this, for sure it's related to this whole Gemara, but it's not a reenactment of it. And so the Torah, the halacha at least, does not give you the opportunity to say, I'm going to go and find a Kohen who'll do it for nothing. Okay, you have to pay the 5 shekalim. It works out that usually what happens is the Kohen gives you the 5 shekalim back, and then you usually give a donation to charity. But the Kohen doesn't have to give you the 5 shekalim back. You can keep.
Why do you think God said 5 shekalim? Why not 1? Because you said it's a lot of money, 5 in those days.
You're asking me.
Isn't that the value of a slave at that age?
Probably, yes. Probably the value of a child at that age. If we go and look it up, I'll look it up later. Because of the different values at different ages. I think you're probably right, Michael. I'll have a look.
Yeah, I was going to say the value or something.
Yeah, that's probably the answer, Michael. It's a good answer. But Johnny, you keep asking me difficult questions. Why did God choose this? And what you asked me last week on something as well. Why did God say this? I don't know. Despite the fact that my children think that I'm God when they say Hashem Yitain, God will give, I'm not actually God. So I don't know the answer to that question. Right. So this was a very interesting little digression of the Gemara. This is how Moshe decided to do things in a fair way. So he didn't get aggravation from the 273 nebuchs that he chose to give the 5 shekalim. It wasn't him that chose it. It was the Kalpi, the ballot box chose it, and effectively, of course, Kodesh Baruch Hu chose it, because you put your hand in and you get the one out that Kodesh Baruch Hu wants you to get out. So,
can I just say I've driven around Bnei Brak a few times, and I've also always been amazed when I've seen the Haredim at the lottery box buying a lottery ticket, and I think this gives them a heter than going for a lottery.
Okay, well, they're
not supposed to gamble.
There is a serious opinion, number of serious opinions that say that doing the lottery is not allowed.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying this.
And if you think about it, that makes perfect sense, because what are you saying when you do the lottery? You're saying that I don't trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give me what is my due, and so I'm going to try something else to get what I want. On the other hand, they would answer you. They would say, no, if you don't buy a ticket, you've got to give Hashem a bit of help here. If Hashem wants me to win the lottery, I've got to help him out by buying a ticket. I can't expect Hashem to make me win the lottery if I haven't bought a ticket. It's this bit of the same idea of, the famous story of the fellows, there's torrential rain and there's a flood, and he's stuck in his house. The famous story, Michael.
On the roof.
Yeah, he sent the people send a boat for him. He said, no, I'm not going in this boat. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will save me. And the waters rise, and he goes up that stairs, and they send a fire engine with a ladder. He says, no, I'm not going on the ladder. Hashem will save me. And he goes right onto the roof, and the water's rising, and they send a helicopter for him. And he said, no, I'm not going on the helicopter. Hashem will save me. And the waters rise, and he drowns. And he goes up to Hashemayim, and he says to God, I trusted in you, and you didn't save me. He says, you idiot. I sent you a boat, I sent you a ladder, and I sent you a helicopter. Not my fault you're an idiot, and you never took any of the help that I sent you. So you've got to do your bit. So they would say, I want to win the lottery. I've got to give HaKadosh Baruch Hu a bit of help. I'm going to buy a ticket at least. So that would be their comeback.
Another rabbi actually told me, one of the rabbis of the communities back here said, you should buy a lottery ticket, but only one.
Yes. Because if you buy more than one, then you're saying that I've actually increased my odds of doing it. And therefore, you're actually saying it's not a Kodesh Baruch Hu who's going to make me win this lottery. If I buy enough tickets, I'll win the lottery. So that's right, Michael. I'd forgotten about that. I've heard that as well. So there are some rabbis that say it's okay to buy a lottery ticket for the reason that I've just said. You've got to give a Kodesh Baruch Hu a bit of a hand here and buy a ticket, but you're only allowed to buy one ticket. If you buy one ticket, you then can say, I bought a ticket. If Hashem wants me to win it, I'll win it. And if he doesn't want me to win it, well, he doesn't want me to win it, but I've done my hishtadlut, I've done my bit. So, yes, that was interesting about the lottery. Yeah, there are a lot of lottery stands in Bnei Brak, you're right. But then again, there are a lot of people in Bnei Brak. So the Gemara is now finished with that little bit, and it's going back now. We're over here in the Gemara. It's going. You still got the Gemara on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's going back to our previous bit that we were talking about, and that's Eldad and Medad. Let's remind ourselves with the psukim of this whole business here. And it's verse 26, Jeffrey, on the screen for you.
Now 2 men remained in the camp. The name of one was Eldad, and the name of the second was Medad, and the Spirit rested upon them. They were among those written, but they did not go out to the tent, but prophesied in the camp.
Okay, stop there. And that's where we started. They were among those written. And we remember we started, well, what were they written for? Well, they were the ones that had they were appointed by Moshe in the 72, and they were written, because it means they were amongst those who had a petek written for them in the box. And they were meant to come, put their hand in the box, and take out a thing which would have either said elder, or it would have said nothing, blank. And they didn't go. They did not go. V'lo yatza'u ha'ohela. They did not go to the tent. Which tent did they not go to?
The tent of the meeting.
The tent of the meeting, where this kalpi was, where the ballot box was. They didn't go to the tent of meeting, and they stayed in the camp. So the first opinion is that they didn't go to there, and they stayed in the camp. Now the Gemara is going to now go into the detail of why they didn't go out to the tent, and it's going to go into the detail about verse 27. Just before I leave this, just read verse 27.
The lad ran and told Moses, saying, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp.
So now the Gemara is going to ask 2 questions. Why didn't they go and take their thingy out of the kalpi and see whether they were an elder or not? And what was it they were prophesying about? Okay, before I put the Gemara on the screen, does anybody know what they were prophesying about? You do. You'll have heard it once I tell it you, and I'm not going to tell it you because the Gemara is going to tell it you. Here we go, back into the Gemara. Right, so first of all, we're going to deal with why they didn't go and take their chances and put their hand in the box and take out a petek. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says that they b'machane nishtayru, they remained in the camp. B'sha'a sha'emar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu leMoshe. At the time that Hashem said to Moshe, Esfa li shivim ish, gather for me 70 men. At that time, when Hashem said to Moshe, gather to me 70 men and I'll make them into elders to help you. Amru Eldad uMedad. Eldad and Medad said either to themselves or to one another, Ein anu ru'uyin la'ota gedula. We are not fit for such kavod. We are not fit to be elders. We are just ordinary people. They were very humble. They displayed tremendous humility. And although they were chosen, they said, no, it's not for us. We're not worthy. We're not worthy of this.
2 questions on that, therefore the lottery wouldn't have been required because there were only 70 people there.
Correct, but that we didn't know that when the lottery was thought of by Moshe, he didn't know they were going to say that. All he knows.
So at the end of the day, what we're saying is that although they intended to have a lottery, there wasn't a lottery.
There was a lottery, and you'll see why in a minute. But your logic is sound, except you'll get there's a twist in the tail coming.
Right. The other thing is, the other curiosity is, presumably Eldad and Medad were from the same tribe, if they were friendly with one another. Possibly. So that means one tribe would have a lot less representation in the 70.
Possibly not. I don't know. Doesn't say. They probably is the answer, because they did stick together, didn't they? But don't know.
Okay.
So then what did they say? They said, we're not fitting. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu say? Oh, that's good. You're very humble people. I like humble people, says Hashem. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. God says, Hoel umiyatetem atzmechem. Since you, what's that word here? Umiyatetem. What word can you see in the middle of that?
Ma'at, little.
Very good. Ma'at, little. Since you make atzmechem, yourselves, little, since you have been humble and made yourselves little, hareini mosif gedula al gedulatchem. I'm going to make you even greater. So this is a similar idea that we have in Pirkei Avot, isn't it? Those that run after kavod, kavod runs away from them. Those that run away from kavod, kavod chases after them and catches up with them. These people were running away from kavod, according to this opinion. They were running away. They didn't want to be elders. They said, we're not fitting. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, not only are you fitting to be an elder, you're extra fitting to be an elder. We're going to make you even greater. Now, what does that mean? How were they made greater? Asks the Gemara. Uma gedula hosif lahem. And what was the greatness that Hashem added on for them? How did Hashem make them greater? Now, we need to go back to the Pasuk now, because we missed something. We missed something. We were not as observant as the Gemara. And I'll show you what the Gemara points out to us. The Gemara says, Shehanaviyim, the 70 prophets, the 70 elders who became prophets, Kulan nit nabu u fasku. They all nit nabu from Navi. They all prophesied u pasku. What does that word mean? Pasku. What word do you know that sounds a bit like that? Anyone? Upasku lahafsik. If you say to somebody, tafsik.
Stop.
Enough.
Yeah.
Enough. Tafsik, stop. Tafsik means to stop. So they started to prophesy, upasku, and they stopped prophesying, these 70 elders. They didn't last. Their prophecy didn't last. And we'll have a look at the pasuk in a minute. V'heim, but these two, Eldad and Medad, nitnaba'u v'lo pasku. They prophesied, but did not stop prophesying. They continued to prophesy. Hence, we're told that they prophesied in the camp when all the other prophets had finished prophesying. Now, how did the Gemara know that? Let me show you the psukim that we did not take enough notice of. Okay.
Johnny, I'm sorry. I thought these elders were just to help Moshe out.
They became prophets. We remember, look at verse 25. Jeffrey, verse 25 on the screen.
The Lord descended in a cloud and spoke to him, and he increased some of the spirit that was on him and bestowed it on the 70 elders. And when the spirit rested upon them, they prophesied, but they did not continue.
So Hashem gives them prophecy, and then we never noticed this word, did we? Velo yasafu, translated here as, but they did not continue. Did any of you pay attention to that word? No, neither did I. So the Gemarah comes along and says, they didn't continue. And then what's the next verse? And now 2 men remained in the camp, Eldad and Medad, and what are they doing? Prophesying. It's there, straightforward. It's in the psukim. We just never noticed it. The 70 men stopped prophesying. Eldad and Medad continued to prophesy. And that, says the Gemarah, was a reward for them being humble and not wanting the yichus of being an elder. And we never noticed it. It's there in black and white. Okay. So I've got a problem for you to understand.
What's that teaching us? I'm not sure.
It's teaching us that if you think you're unworthy of something and you are truly humble and not false modesty and pretending that you're not worthy, and you really are worthy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will actually increase your nuvuah,
I understand that, but what's that got to do with the lottery?
Okay, we've not got there yet.
Oh, okay.
Since we're talking about how the lottery worked, and we were told that Eldad and Medad stayed in the camp and they never went to the tent for this lottery.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about how Eldad and Medad got to be in the camp prophesying. Why were they prophesying in the camp and no one else? Well, the Torah tells us, because the other lot did not continue. Only Eldad and Medad continued. Well, why? Gemarah's just told us, according to Rebbe Shimon at least, because they were very humble. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them an extra reward. Okay, fine. Very nice. That's Reb Shimon. Okay, so I've got a bit of a problem which the Gemarah is going to address. And that is this word here, velo yasafu, but they did not continue. That's not the right translation of the word yasafu. What does the word yasaf mean? What is le'esof?
To add.
To add,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
And they did not add, right? They did not add. It's a bit strange. And the Gemarah is going to pick us up on that. Let's go back to the Gemarah. Okay.
You mentioned there was additions to the menu or something the other night. Was the word similar?
Tosefet.
Yeah.
Tosefet.
Yeah.
Tosefet Shabbat is the extra bit we put on, the 18 minutes we put on. And when you go to the restaurant, the Tosefet is your chips or your salad, if you're on a diet. Your side dishes, your extras. Okay, so I'm going to skip a little bit here. And just read this bit, because this bit that I'm skipping is another slight digression about what they were prophesying about, and I want to give that more time next week. But just to finish off this bit about them stopping prophesying, I'm going down a couple of paragraphs to here. Amar, the writer said, the master said, Kol hanaviyim kulan nitba'u upasku. All of the prophets, those 70 elders, prophesied and then stopped. V'hein nitba'u v'lo pasku. But these two, Eldad and Medad, did not stop. Right? We've just said that. And the Gemarah says, how do you know? Minalanda pasku. How do you know they stopped? And I've just told you it says so in the pasuk. But we've got a problem, because that pasuk has been translated as they did not continue, but that's not what it says. And the Gemarah picks us up and says, if you're going to tell me it's because this pasuk that I just read to you, they prophesied and they did not, yasafu, translated on our screen as they did not continue. But I've got a problem. Says the Torah, there's another pasuk where the word yasaf means exactly the opposite. It means it did continue. Ela me'ata. I've got a different place from here. Kol gadol velo yasaf. In Devarim chapter 5, I better show it to you. Devarim chapter 5 is Moshe talking about the giving of the 10 commandments. Jeffrey, it's on the screen, verse 19, please.
The Lord spoke these words to your entire assembly at the mountain out of the midst of the fire, the cloud, and the opaque darkness with a great voice, which did not cease. And he inscribed them on 2 stone tablets and gave them to me.
So Moshe is describing Hashem speaking with a voice to the Bnei Israel. And look what it says. Kol gadol, a great voice. Velo yasaf. It's our same word. We've just said that means did not continue. And here it says, which did not cease, the absolute opposite. So the Gemarah says, the Gemarah, of course, knows all this psukim and says, hang on a minute, you can't translate the same word in 2 opposite ways just because it suits you. You can't translate the word yasafu in Bamidbar, meaning did not continue, and then in Devarim to translate it as it did continue and didn't stop. What's going on? Hachinami de lo osifu. Surely that means that you can't do that. It must be consistent. Ella de lo pasakhu. Rather, the intention is that it did not stop. Interpreting the word yosafu, meaning from the word sof. There was an end. De lo yosafu, there was not an ending. So you have to interpret it to mean that the word can be interpreted to mean that it did not stop prophesying. So it doesn't make sense. That's the Gemara's question. You can't mess about with a word saying it means the opposite. Answers the Gemarah, no. Elahacha k'tiv vayitnaba'u, and they prophesied, past tense. We're talking about the 70 elders. They prophesied in the past tense. Hatam, but with our Eldad and Medad, what does it say? Mit nabe'im. They are prophesying in the present tense. Adayin mit nabe'in v'holchim. They are still adayin. They are still prophesying v'holchim and continued. So the Gemarah comes and says, you're right, that velo yasafu, that is badly translated in the translation. If the Gemarah was here today, it would say, I don't like that translation that says they did not continue because it doesn't mean that. It does mean that, but that's not how we learn it. We learn it from the fact that with the 70 elders, it says they prophesied past tense. And with Eldad and Medad, it says they are prophesying present tense. And from that, we learn that they continued to prophesy after the others had stopped. And that was the gift, the present, the reward of Hashem for being humble. Next week, we will then just go back to these 2 paragraphs that I missed out, and we will ask the question, Uma Nuvua Nitnaba'u. And what was this prophecy that Eldad and Medad were saying? If you don't want to have a spoiler, don't read on and don't read the translation. We will do next week, please God, the Gemarah's 3 different opinions on what Eldad and Medad were prophesying about, one of which I guarantee you will have heard before, but you didn't know it came from this Gemarah. Any questions on today's Gemarah? What did we do today? We did about how Moshe did the lottery of the Leviim and the firstborns. They had this Kalpi, 273 over. We went through with the help of Michael Kraus, the Pidyon Aben ceremony, and we spoke about the reward of Eldad and Medad for being humble, at least according to Rabbi Shimon. Any questions?
Please don't forget to record next week, because I hope to be flying out, subject to flight cancellations.
Right, we will do our best not to forget. We can stop the recording now, which I will do.